What's up guys, JayzTwoCents here, and today we're going to take a look at the new flagship case from Fractal Design. This kind of came as a last minute. We weren't really expecting to see this in 2017, yet here it is. The Define R6 is not really a successor to the R5, at least not in my opinion, because there's enough design changes, enough complete redesign of the entire case and the way it works, though I don't feel like it's actually, you can tell it has heritage from the R4 and the R5, but it definitely takes all of that and makes its own new chassis, fixing a lot of things a lot of us have complained about with the past and adding some new features that we didn't even know we wanted until we saw it.
The all-new Master Liquid 120 and 240L RGB coolers provide an easy and reliable way to keep your processor nice and cool. Their all-new dual-chamber pump and low-resistance radiator offer a higher transfer of heat for both Intel and AMD CPUs, while 6 preset lighting effects and RGB ensure that the 120 and 240L seamlessly match your color design choice. Make it yours by following the link in the description below.
So the very first thing you should be able to see that's different, obviously, is we have a full tempered glass side panel. It runs the entire length. It's frameless, if you will. There's no frame around it like some have. There's no screw holes. There's no brackets holding it on. It's the cleanest side panel on the market, at least as far as I'm concerned. I keep this rag handy now because anytime I move the case, I'm touching the glass. But it actually has thumb screws on the back that are pre-installed when it's shipped because they don't want it to pop out. But it is a completely toolless side panel because it has, as you can see, these little nubbins, if you are there. We'll call them nubbins. And they just pop right in right there. And then you've got the front, which looks like kind of like a standard side panel, right, with this little rail right here. But then when you want to put it on, you just line it up on the front and then pop it down. And that's it. And that is not going, or wipe off my fingerprints again. That's the only downside about tempered glass, obviously. It's just like you want to keep it clean because it looks terrible with fingerprints. Now, Fractal told me they were comfortable with me doing this because they do it themselves to show how tight it is.
Ladies.
It's not going anywhere. That's not popping off. So, as long as you're not running around with your case, glass side down, hitting bumps or going off-roading, I don't think there's gonna be a problem. Let's go ahead and pop this off though, because, yeah, we're gonna do a teardown of this thing. Now the back is actually the same. So those thumb screws that ship in the back, once you pop them out, it's the exact same retention mechanism. In fact, I wonder, could you order another glass side panel and show off the back if you wanted? I don't know if you would really care. Oh my God, you can. So if you had a really clean wiring job, if you had custom length cables that were made and it looks super pretty like some of those cases you see, you could actually show it off this way. That'd be neat, have them on both sides. I didn't even think about that till right now. Before we talk about the inside of the case, there's something I wanna fix on here real quick. For whatever reason, the R series cases always shipped with the door opening right to left, like this. Which doesn't make sense to me because with the panel being on this side, and this orientation tells you the case is gonna be on your right. So opening the door like this never made that much sense to me. So you've got these hinges right here, you unscrew this, and then you just apply it to the other side and screw it on to the hinge over here. And then put it back on in the exact reverse order of how you took it off. And then you switch the sides. And honestly, I think that that's the way it should ship. I don't know why they do it this way, but whatever. So now this opens the way that it's supposed to, giving you access to your front side air filter, exposing our 2 pre-installed 140mm front intake fans. And also this case retains something that I feel like is kind of rare these days, which is a 5 1/4 bay drive. Now you could use this for a 5 1/4 reservoir, 5 1/4 bay drive, fan controller, whatever. A lot of cases these days has just been omitting that entirely, where they're not including any of that because they're going for this super clean, all fan front end. At least Fractal gives you the option to retain at least one of those devices if you want it. Now speaking of the front filter, it's got sort of a screen type material like that you'd find on a Windows screen. It's not super fine, but it's still gonna stop your dust and your debris from getting inside your case, but it's not gonna hinder the airflow too much. So that's a nice thing to see. And then of course for air intake, the design has been proven to work plenty of times. Plenty of ventilation right here on the side of the case, because as you can see, the fans are recessed back, I don't know how well you can see that, the fans are actually behind the vents instead of being even with the vents, which some cases have unfortunately made the mistake of doing. So plenty of air intake for the front. Speaking of fan filters, we do have a filter that runs the entire length of the bottom of the case. So if you have rear bottom intake fans, like Puget Systems likes to use at least one fan on the bottom bringing air in. You also have your power supply on the back. Same exact screen material as on the front. Gives you protection for both the bottom intake fans that might be there as well as your power supply. But it's accessible from the front. That's a good move. Some people tend to put them access in the back, which is a terrible idea, especially if this is against a wall or something. Now, as you can see, the top of the case is a solid panel. That's because the way it ships from the factory is a very cross-flow design. Now, this is their new Modu-Vent design. In the past, to get the vents out, you had to open up the case, put your hand in, and kind of pop out the individual panels. There were 3 panels, pop them out to get access to the fans or to install fans or whatever. Now we've got this push button design right here. With the push of one button, you get access, to the Modu-Vent, and it comes out in a single piece. As you can also see that we do have our filter right here in our vent, very similar to this guy, so that when you remove the Modu-Vent cover, you can put the filter and the vent back on, exposing airflow for your rear or your top exhaust fans, your radiators, whatever it might be. Now, speaking of the top vents, they've redesigned this a little bit, where the 120 millimeter fans used to be offset to give you more clearance for your radiators, but the 140s were still centered. Which the problem was, if you wanted to do 140 radiators, it might impact on some motherboards when it hangs down. By them offsetting the whole thing, now we have tons of clearance for motherboards that have high VRM heat sinks and such. But look at this, we also have an included fill port hole. So you can take a fill port, if you're doing a custom loop, mount it to this, and give yourself easy access to top off your loop if you need to, without even having to go inside the case because of the button right here and the quick release Modu-Vent or top vent. So what we've got right here is a fairly aesthetically pleasing wall that I would say as a modder, this would be a good canvas to etch something or paint something or make a lit panel in some way. These have got these thumb screws. All they reveal is the backside of the hard drive cages and where they mount. They put this on there to make it pretty. Unfortunately, if you're gonna be using all the hard drive cages, you've got to leave this wall in there. However, if you don't want all the hard drive cages, which I'm about to show you on the backside, these do have screws, which are standard screws, they're not riveted in there, so this whole wall comes out, exposing this as to a giant open chassis. We also have this PSU shroud right here. That's become like the norm in 2016 and 2017. PSU shrouds hide your power supply, pretend they're not there. Why show off all the cables where they're bunched up at the bottom? So this has become the standard. And obviously this is the first time we've seen this with a defined R series case. We saw this in things like the Meshify and whatnot, but we didn't see this in the R5 because it kind of became the norm after the R5 was already launched. As you can see, it's fully vented. So we have plenty of airflow going down to the power supply if you have the fan facing up, or if you have it face down. Remember, we have that full length ventilation on the bottom and the filter allowing us to be able to make sure that the air is clean, but you have plenty of airflow to your power supply. I mean, after all, there's a fan in there. It needs airflow. Got a nice thick grommet right here, thick rubber that doesn't feel like it's gonna tear easily like some cases in the past. We've also got plenty of grommet pass-throughs right here along the motherboard tray and on the top right here for things like fan and CPU UPS power cables and all of that. But the biggest change, which some of you have probably already noticed, is the fact that it supports eATX motherboards. Finally, that was one of the things that kept me from using Fractal cases because a lot of my builds have eATX motherboards and this now supports it. I don't know why that was so hard in the past, but I digress. Here it is, eATX support in an R5, or excuse me, I almost called it an R5, in an R6. Would like to see that now make its way over to the S series chassis. But anyway, moving on to the back now, you can see a completely redesigned way of installing the hard drives. You have the sleds, but instead of them being a squeeze sled that slide in and out, it's got one captive thumb screw, and it's got this little bracket right here that mounts onto that wall that I showed you. You can fit on here, obviously, your 3.5 inch motherboards, 3.5 inch hard drives, 2.5 inch SSDs, or 2.5 inch drives. It simply pushes in like this, one screw to mount it. Now, in terms of how many of these you can fit in here, if you bought extra sleds, because there are options available for this case, you can fit a pretty substantial amount of hard drives in here. So if we're talking 3.5-inch drives, right? Standard 3.5-inch thick hard drives, you could fit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, because down here they get closer together for SSDs, so you have to space one in between down here. So 11 3.5-inch hard drives will fit right here, making it perfect for things like home servers, Plex servers, workstations with tons of hard drive space needed. 11, plus room for two 2.5-inch SSDs right here, plus whatever M.2 drives you might have available on your motherboard, or if you have something like an Asus with DIMM.2, plus the motherboards, you could fit a ridiculous amount of storage on here. Now, because of the notch right here on the back of these sleds, you have plenty of room to route your cables up and down to all of these. They're not going to be squished against the panel, the back panel, but you also have them offset this way. So you have plenty of room for a 30mm radiator attached to the fans right here. So 30mm thickness would fit no problem. Remove the sleds, you can go as thick as you want, as we're about to show you. But that's a pretty neat design. So you can retain both hard drives and your radiators on the front. Something else that's nice to see here is we have an included fan hub that has a PWM supply right here, as well as a SATA power supply. So you can have 3 PWM controlled devices, or more than likely just fans, and you can also have an additional 6 plugged in that are still controlled off PWM that don't have to be PWM fans. So 3 PWM fans, as well as a 6-way hub right here for regular fans, making a single point of connection for all of your fans if you're water cooling this. It's literally like they actually listened to people. That's pretty awesome if you ask me. All right, moving forward, let's go ahead and remove this cage or this wall so you can see just how open the chassis can be. So you got 2 screws on the top right here, 2 screws on the bottom, and then it looks like there are going to be some right here behind the front panel. So once you take this guy off and this guy off. So once that's out, you can see you've got this pretty widely open chassis that gives you all the room for massive radiator and reservoir up front, radiator on top, technically radiator on the back if you want, with lots of radiator support, but you lose all of the hard drive support with the exception of the 2.5-inch available right here on the back. There's actually some optional upgrades to this case that are available as well. If we take a look at the standard connectivity on the front, you got your power button, you've got your reset button, mic and headphones, 2 USB 2.0s and 2 USB 3.0s. However, if you wanted to update that, you can actually upgrade it basically with the same exact connector here, but it includes a USB Type-C 3.1, Gen 3, Gen 2, whatever it is, but that is an optional add-on. But of course, it wouldn't be 2017 if we didn't have a vertical GPU mount option. So of course, we've got our riser card right here, plugs into your motherboard, and then we've got a screw kit that comes with it. This is an optional piece, so this is something that you'll have to consider if you want this either at the time of purchase or add it on later. It's got additional standoffs that screw into the shroud. All right, so you just mount the riser card down to the standoffs that you just installed. So when it comes to length, I decided to kind of pull out all the stops, and I pulled out my 1080 Hall of Fame because this is a very long card, as you can see. It's actually a little bit bigger than a 2 slot. It's like a 2.5 slot, which is gonna push it somewhat close to the glass panel. So that's something to keep in mind. The amount of space you're gonna have right here could choke off the intakes on the fan, but if you're running a 2-slot card, obviously you're gonna have plenty of room, or a water-cooled graphics card, of course you have plenty of room. But if we take a look now at this, we should still have plenty of room for our wall right there. Yes. Yes, we do. So as you can see, it barely fits. Look at that, right there, Nick, look at that. Barely fits, but as you can see, that's actually pretty neat. That like fills out that space. Pretty nice right there. I think the white card looks awesome with the black contrast. So I think the R6 is one of the most versatile cases on the market today, especially with how much they've achieved in a mid-tower case. Because like I said, full water cooling support with the retention of hard drive brackets if you're gonna be running slim rads or 30mm rads on the front. You can fit rads on the top while retaining the front radiator and the hard drive cages and a vertical mount and the Psu Shroud. Toolless removal of the side panels. Probably the cleanest looking side panel yet, in my opinion, when it comes to tempered glass without brackets or screws. It's really hard to see how it could possibly get any better. Now it does actually come in other options, or other colors as well. We've got black, which is this one with the white hardware. We got blackout, which is black with the black hardware. You've got gunmetal, which is actually the one I had requested, but they sent me black, but whatever, I digress. I'm not salty about that. And there's also white with black hardware, which I think would look phenomenal. I think I wanna get a white one. I think I wanna do a build in a white one. But yeah, imagine this graphics card in a white case, Nick, with like all the white parts we can get, like the white tough series from Asus and all that. That would look, I've never done a white build and I kind of want to do that. But anyway, you guys know what to do. If you've got comments, put them down below. Tell me what you think about this case. What would you change? If there was something you think that's really standing out to you that this case should have had that it doesn't, like integrated lighting. I think that's something I always mention, but I know cost is hard on that. Put it down in the comments below. I'd like to hear your opinions, but I have a hard time seeing how this one can really get much better. Anyway, I'm gonna go, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you in the next one.